teach you the main ideas behind the King's Indian defense so you can start playing this opening without needing to study any theory. So the King's Indian defense starts after the moves d4, knight f6, and usually the white player will play c4 if they have different first moves. I will show you what to do against them further in the video. Our idea is to play this move g6 because we want to fianchetto this bishop on the long diagonal. And then white can play a move like knight to c3, which is the most played because their plan is to take up the center with the push e4. So we are going to play bishop to g7, putting the bishop on this long diagonal, e4 from white, and then here it's important to play this move d6 because you want to prevent white from pushing. Because if you were to just castle, they could always push this pawn. This is playable, of course, you can go back with the knight, but I think this is really passive and you are allowing white to shut out your bishop. So I like this move d6 to stop this push from white, because if they still want to go for the push, you will have this exchange, you can take the queen, they will probably take with the knight, and then you can always move your knight, for example, here, and you also have this attack with the bishop, and the knight can always go back here. So that is why we are playing this move d6 to stop their push, and also to support one of our pawns in the future if we want to push. White will usually play knight f3, and then you can castle. And here white could play bishop e2 or bishop d3, and I have to say bishop e2 is the best. If they play bishop d3 in the future, they will have some problems because this bishop is blocking their own queen, and in many variations the bishop won't be doing anything on this d3 square. So bishop e2 is a better move from white. And then here we will immediately strike in the center with this move e5. And from this main position, which is the main starting idea you have to keep in mind if you want to play the King's Indian, there are so many different variations that white can play. In this video I will quickly take a look at most of them and tell you what you can do, and then in future videos I will make more detailed lines for every single variation. So the main ideas here for white is to either push, which is the Petrosian variation that we're going to take a look at here. They can also castle and just ignore this. And they can also capture, which is the exchange variation, which is also possible. So we are going to take a look at all of them. So first, what to do if they push. If they push, I like to go for a crazy kingside attack. We're just trying to destroy the white king here and on the king side. So we are straight up going to go for the attack. We'll play this move knight back to e8. And of course we move this knight back because we want to push this f5 pawn, and that is the first plan that we have to start our attack. White's most likely gonna castle, and then you can play this move f5, and we are immediately gonna start going for the white king. So f5, of course there are a couple of variations. If white captures, you can recapture with the pawn. You don't capture with one of your pieces because your idea is to just push this, and you want to get this open g-file. And this might look totally crazy because your king is exposed, but there's actually not a single way for white to attack you, and you can always drop back the king here in the corner, be safe, and then put your rook and your queen on this g-file. So if they capture you, you will take back with the pawn. If they don't capture you, most likely they will play something like bishop here to g5, trying to be annoying and attack your queen. You can always play bishop f6, and in most variations you will get this exchange, and then in the future they will probably still take there after all. So you will get a position like this. In our main position, if they capture, as I said, you recapture with the pawn with these ideas in mind. And then again, bishop g5 is the most played move here, and often these variations will all transpose into this position. If they don't take and they play something more passive, and it's already hard to find a move for white, let's say just a regular move, you can always just push this pawn because that was our entire plan, to shut off this bishop, and then in the future you will be able to push these pawns as well. So if they don't capture you, you can just push, and that position is great. But most players will go for a capture and probably also this trade with the bishop. And then here, although this looks crazy, we will soon have a decent attack by moving the king, moving the rook, and also putting our queen here on g5. Many white players play a move like h3 here. Of course they don't have to play this, but the main idea is to stop your knight from coming in. Other moves they could play are maybe something like queen d2. So h3, and your idea is always the same no matter what they play. You go here with the queen. If they go immediately for this queen here, you can also play queen to e7. And if they go for this check, you don't want to block with the queen. You want to move your king so that you can put your rook here and get a attack going. Even if they try to go something, for example, with knight there, you can always move the rook. So that is if they go for an early queen. If they play more defensive and they play something like h3, you can play queen e7 with this same idea, for example, after they go there. But here it is smart to actually push and block this queen from coming in. That is always something you can do. If you want to stop the queen, just push this pawn and then block them. And here you can already see we will be able to set up a lot of pieces here. And by pushing this f4 pawn, this really important push, we have also now activated this bishop. And this bishop will also be able to sacrifice itself if necessary on this h3 square. And it's important to try and remember just these ideas of going for this early f5 push, recapturing with the pawn, pushing to f4, and then just line up everything on the enemy king. And this attack will take some moves. You will need about 20 moves, 25 moves before you will get a winning position, but it's definitely worth going for this. White's only real plan, in my opinion, is to go for a queenside attack, because the center is blocked, and the king side, that's where we are dominating. So the only thing White can do is try to go for a queenside attack. Here you can play a move like queen g7, and as you can see, we already have the first threat here. Because if White were to just play a normal move, of course you can capture here with the bishop, and this cannot recapture you because your queen is on this file, pinning it. So they will have to play something like queen h1 or king h1 or king h2, because they have to get off this line. So that otherwise they have to get off this line, because otherwise you would be just sacrificing the bishop here. And at this position, it's always a good idea to play something like king h8. In general, as I told you, you want to get your rook here on this g file. So just put your king in the corner and you will be fine there, and you can then move your rook later. So let's say White continues with the attack with a move like b4, rook g8. These are just the main ideas. And as you will see, we are not developing any of these pieces in the beginning of the game, but that's normal. We are first trying to set up our attack, and then once we have run out of moves, we will start using our last pieces. Because in many variations, this bishop will actually stay here until at some point it sacrifices itself for this pawn. There's no real point in moving it too early. Also, moving your knight is not super useful if you do it too early. You can even do a move like queen h6, and again we are trying to set up this attack. And of course, if the enemy knight was not present here, you would be able to do this sacrifice and then go for this checkmate with the queen. Right now that doesn't work. For example, if they play a move like a4, this sacrifice doesn't work because they can always block with the knight. And if you go for this too early, you will actually lose your attacking chances, and it will be really hard to win this game, because White will have this queenside attack and you just wasted your kingside attack. So it's important to be patient. You always have to calculate if you do have a winning attack, but if you don't, just be patient. For example, here you can play a move like knight e7. You can also always play a5 if you want to counter White, but I like just allowing White to push because it doesn't really matter. You can play something like knight d7. They will make a move, for example bishop here, because they don't want you to be able to push this. So bishop here is a good move from White. And then again, you can always play a move like a5 to stop their attack. And as I said, you have to be patient. And at some point you will be able to move this knight away. For example, you can move it here, or you can move it to b6. And after you have moved this knight, you will now have a winning attack. Simply because now we will be able to sacrifice our bishop, because these rooks are connected. And since these rooks are connected, we will have a crushing attack. We also have an attack here on the bishop. So let's just say they move back. They can also move here, which I will also take a look at in a bit. But let's say they move to c2. You will have this sacrifice with the bishop. And if they capture, you can capture with the queen. They can block with the knight, like I showed you before. But here there is this sneaky move f3. And after f3, there's really nothing White can do. This is the main idea. Because let's say White captures your rook. Well, now even checkmate is unavoidable, because we have checkmate here with the queen. This knight cannot move, If they try to do something like rook here, of course you can always take, and do checkmate. They don't have to, of course, capture your rook here, but it's really hard, because if white just makes any other move, you have something like rook g2, and you are threatening to do a checkmate here on h2. And of course, if they capture you, that is also a checkmate. So really, nothing they can do. Of course, if they go for something like rook g3, you can always take here. And the best move here is actually to activate another rook. For example, rook to g8 or even rook to f8, because we have this pawn that we will be able to push. And there's almost nothing that white can do. White will be losing in every variation, because if you look at their pieces, they barely cannot move. For example, bishop here, just as an example, takes. That is checkmate, so that also doesn't work. Yeah, if they go back with the bishop in most lines, you will be able to activate the knight, for example here, attack the queen, push this pawn, and everything is just gonna win in this variation. So that is the main idea here, to always go for this kingside attack. But remember, you have to be patient, and of course you always have to calculate, because there are many variations. White can also, for example, be more safe and play the bishop here. But even then, for example here, you would be able to do this fork with the knight. And even if you don't do the fork with the knight, let's say they play something like rook here, again, there is this sacrifice. And even if they go back, you can do this fork with the knight, but you can also do something like e4, pushing away this knight. This knight has to go, and then something like e3, attacking the queen. If they take, you take, the queen has to go back. For example, queen here, or let's say queen here maybe. And then a move like knight g4, and you just have attacks and checkmating chances in every single variation. So that is how I would tell you to play the Petrosian variation if they push this pawn to d5. You can also get this position, which is the same as we've looked at before, but here they are ignoring our pawn push and they play something like castles. If they do this, I would always recommend to just capture in the center, because in the end we play this because we want to exchange this pawn and weaken their center. So you can always go for something like this. Here a fun move to play is rook e8, just putting some pressure, threatening to win this pawn. Of course, if they already have the bishop here, it's a little bit less useful and you don't have to play this move. f3 is something that is common from white. And in many variations, I like to actually play this knight to c6. And you might think, well, if they take you, you will just get doubled pawns. But that really doesn't matter, because this pawn is quite amazing, taking away these two squares from the enemy knight. And now we have a really strong structure here. And this bishop can develop here, it can also go here, or even to b7. We have open files for the rook. Capturing this knight is not really good for white. So they might play something like bishop e3, which is the most played in this line. You can always capture yourself if they don't capture you, just because you want to free up this pawn, because now in these variations we are not going for a crazy kingside attack, because we just simply won't be able to do so. These pawns are too strong, this position is too safe, so we're just gonna go for a queenside attack. That is our other plan. And this queenside attack, again, you have to be patient, play moves like bishop e6, c6, queen e7, and these are all slow build-up moves. But if you take a look at the position, you will start noticing that, we have these two bishops here, we have this queen here on this diagonal as well, this knight is putting some pressure, and you can see that we are slowly building up to attack this queen side. White will often try to play everything down the d file to stop us from pushing or to win this pawn, but it doesn't matter, we're not going to push, we just want to attack the queen side. So for example, rook there, you can always do this trap as well. This is a really nice trap to play rook here to d8. A lovely move, because you are giving away this pawn. And most players will grab this because they won't see your trick, and the trick here is to play the move b5. b5, you are now attacking this bishop with the queen, so of course they have to move. Often they will try to do this in between move, attacking your rook, but they will have to go back, and then you can win this pawn. So that is something that happens so much. Actually, the most played line in this position is when they fall for this small trap and take your pawn. You will give away this pawn in some variations, but you can just exchange, take here with the rook, and then you will have an endgame like this, where you have your bishops, you have this pawn, and you will be able to activate your rooks, and this is just an example of what you could play. and you could try to just destroy this queen side and then play for a win there. If they don't go for the trap, they will usually play something like bishop back or maybe one of these pawn moves, and that is fine. We will just keep activating more and more of our pieces. So a really good move here as well is to just play your knight back, get his bishop more active. They might play something like b3. Sometimes you have a knight c5 idea in these lines, and you will always be building up, slowly building up for a strategic battle. Sometimes you will be able to push this if you get all of your pieces on the right squares. If you can't, sometimes you will be able to play something like a6 and b5 as well to do a queenside attack. So for example here, of course, if they capture you, then they are in trouble now because this queen is under attack. If they don't capture you, well, what are they going to play? There's not really any good plan from white. Maybe something like b4 trying to kick away your knight, but you can go to here to a6. They can always defend, but you can reroute back to c7, and now the knight is also supporting this push for the future. And again, just take a look at white's position. There's not much they can do. If they try to do something, they will always be in trouble. So pretty much white cannot do anything in this position. They just have to make waiting move after waiting move. And it's black who will at some point be able to pull the trigger. For example here with a move like a6. And if they try to come closer, at some point you will be able to push this d5. And you will get an exchange like this. But here you can see we have this trick with the queen capturing the pawn. So if you want to play this variation, just keep in mind to be patient, to do a slow build-up. Don't push this too early. Just do this build-up. Put all of your pieces on the right squares, remaneuver, put everything on good squares, active squares, and then at some point you will be able to do this d5 push because white just doesn't have any way of making progress. I also wanted to show you what to do if they go for this exchange variation, what to do if they capture your pawn, because of course you can recapture, and you might think, well, are they not just winning a pawn here? That's actually not true, because you can capture here with the queen, and after they recapture with the knight, you can capture here for free, and if they capture with the bishop, you can actually also capture here for free, because if they capture you, you can take here with the knight, and of course again we have active bishops, we have a good position, so that is perfectly fine. They can also of course choose to trade queens first and then go for this, but again you can take, and for example castles, and you would have a similar position here, maybe something like knight c6. So you also don't have to worry about it if they capture you. Of course, if they capture you, you will just get a lot of exchanges, maybe a little bit more of a symmetrical slash drawish position, but that's also fine since we are playing with the black pieces. What to do if your opponent plays something completely different, for example if they go for a London system, because online, especially online, you will get way more London systems probably than c4s, or at least a lot of London systems. Well, you can go for the same idea with castles, d6, these are always good moves you can play. Against the London system, it's always smart to go for an early c5 push. Early c5 push, because if they capture you, well, you can recapture this. It doesn't really matter. We have this open file. We will be able to develop our knight. We will be able to develop our bishop. So everything is fine. Most London players won't capture. They will play something like c3, knight c6, castles. And this position is just amazing to destroy the London. Because what we have right now is the most common position that London players will go for against our King's Indian defense. And this position is already pretty bad for white, even though this is just the regular London triangle with the bishops out, with the knights out, and this is already bad. Because we have a trick here, a trick that is almost never played by black. This trick is to push this pawn to e5, and this is just amazing. I mean, almost everybody here, 60-70% of players will panic and play the wrong move. So what we are doing with this push is we are attacking this bishop, but we are also in some lines are threatening to push and do a fork on these pieces. And so many players here with the white pieces will panic, and what they will do is they will capture this, and that is a devastating mistake, because if they capture, you can now recapture, and suddenly our queen has been activated on this bishop and it's not protected. So now we have an attack on this bishop and an attack on this bishop. They will often try to go in with the knight to defend it, but of course you can take, and win a bishop. And this is the most played variation. The most played variation in this line. Just straight up winning a piece for black. Of course, they don't have to go for this. They can also go for a little bit of a safer move, pinning your knight, because of course we don't really have anything here because it is protected twice. But even in this variation, you can play takes, 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 just exchange everything, and then play h6 to scare away their bishop. Of course, yeah, if they capture you, that's fine. If they capture you, you can recapture, and actually capturing with the queen is a good move here because you have a lot of pressure here on this pawn, and even in the future potentially here as well. But most players will go back, and you can just expand here and go for this push to kick away their bishop, and then you can play knight h5 going after their bishop, and this amazing move f5. And this is similar to the previous variations where you are just threatening to win this bishop. So probably they are going to give you this check, you can just dodge, and then they will play something like h3, and here you just play this move f4, and their bishop is now completely useless. They have to put it here in this inactive square, it's looking at nothing, it's just out of the game, and here you can even win this pawn. Long ago, when we pushed this, we actually had a double threat. We had this pawn that is now under attack twice, and also this bishop. And they will usually only be able to stop one thing, and that is your them losing their bishop. And then you can just win this pawn. And of course, they can, for example, exchange, but here you are already up a pawn, so that is also a really nice position to have against the London system. White players might go for a more passive setup, and with more passive, I mean something like this, which is more like the Colossus system. For example, you can just go for the same approach with black as you would against the London system. The only difference here is that this e5 push, which we are still going to play, is a little bit less strong because of course this bishop is not here. If they capture you, you can still recapture and get this attack with the queen, and that is the most played variation. But here they have something like knight e4, which is the most played move, after which if you exchange. But still, it's a good position for black, since you can play something like queen c7. And as you can see, we have many active files for our pieces. The bishop can develop, the rook can develop, and in just a couple of moves we will have an amazing position. I also love this little move h6 here, because in many lines I will actually put the bishop here. But if you go for it straight away, they can just attack it with the knight. So if you remember this idea, h6, and then you can play it. You would get something like this, for example. And in many of these lines, you will actually have an amazing time if you play this f5 push. f5 push, e4 push, and kabam, we are taking this pawn here for free. So that is something you can go for in many of these lines. Of course, they don't have to play something like b3. They can also play something else, like for example bishop here. But again, in many lines you have f5, e4, all of their pieces have to go back. And this position is pretty damn amazing for black. You are basically winning in every line, just because white is completely pushed back into their own camp, and black is the one with all of these open diagonals, open files, for example here activating the rook, and in almost every variation you will be able to win material. For example, just bishop here, you can put this rook here, you can always put the queen here, so that if you exchange you have the queen active, and white is always so damn passive, and black has an amazing position. So that is how you can play against these color setup. Definitely subscribe if you enjoyed it. I will make more videos on the King's Indian in the future. Top link in the description is my Discord group for people who want to get better at chess, so take a look at that. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!